It was supposed to be a calm, quiet morning. My wife, Emily, and I had an early flight to New York for a business meeting. She loves flying, well, loves watching the flying part. The window seat is her little sanctuary. She can sit there for hours, watching the clouds drift by, the sunlight bouncing off the wings, and the tiny houses fading below. That morning, everything was perfect. We arrived early, checked in, breezed through security, and even grabbed coffee before boarding. Emily was glowing, already excited to catch a glimpse of the sunrise from 30,000 feet up. We found our seats, 12A and 12B. Emily slipped into the window seat, humming softly as she adjusted her scarf. I stowed our bags and smiled at her. Perfect view? I asked. She grinned, always. But peace, as always, is temporary when you least expect it. A few minutes later, a loud, clicking sound echoed down the aisle. Heels. Confident, impatient, angry heels. I turned to see a woman in her 40s storming toward us. Designer sunglasses, perfectly styled hair, and a face that screamed entitlement. She was muttering under her breath, scanning the row numbers. When she reached ours, she stopped abruptly, glaring straight at Emily. "You're in my seat," the woman snapped, voice sharp enough to turn heads. Emily blinked, confused but polite. "I'm sorry. This is 12A, right? That's what my boarding pass says." Karen, because of course she was a Karen, rolled her eyes dramatically. "I always sit by the window," she said, waving her hand as if that was some kind of law. "You can move." Emily's confusion turned to discomfort. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. This really is my seat." Karen huffed, threw her expensive bag on the middle seat, and called over a flight attendant. "Excuse me," she barked. "This woman is sitting in my seat. I paid for extra legroom, and I'm not moving." The young attendant, visibly nervous, checked both tickets. "Ma'am," she said gently, "the window seat, 12A, belongs to Mrs. Emily Carson." Karen's face turned red, then white, then a dangerous shade of pink. She crossed her arms, lips pursed. "This is ridiculous. I always get the window seat. You must have messed something up." Passengers began whispering. A man across the aisle pulled out his phone, sensing drama. Emily shrank into her seat, wishing the ground would swallow her whole. Then it happened, so fast, no one saw it coming. Karen, shaking with fury, grabbed her coffee cup from the tray she was holding, and flung it. Hot liquid splashed across Emily's blouse, dripping down her scarf. She gasped, frozen in shock. The cabin erupted with gasps and murmurs. The flight attendant screamed, "Ma'am! What are you doing?" Karen smirked, as if proud of herself. "Maybe next time she'll learn to respect people who deserve it." My jaw tightened. Every instinct told me to shout, to defend Emily, but instead, I took a slow breath. Karen had no idea who she'd just messed with. The flight attendants rushed over instantly, horrified. One began helping Emily clean off the spilled coffee, offering tissues and apologizing repeatedly, while the other stood between us and Karen, trying to de-escalate. "Ma'am, please calm down," the attendant said, her voice trembling slightly. But Karen wasn't done yet. She tossed her empty cup aside and muttered, "Maybe next time she'll know not to take what's mine." I looked at Emily. Her blouse was soaked, and her hands were shaking. I'd never seen her this humiliated. The attendant gently said, "Sir, we're so sorry about this. We'll make sure she's handled." I nodded, still silent. My anger wasn't loud, it was cold, sharp, and quiet. The crew led Karen to the front of the plane to speak with the captain. Passengers whispered, some recording the incident on their phones. Emily dabbed at her blouse, trying to compose herself, her voice trembling. "It's okay, I'm fine," she kept saying, but I could see she wasn't. I leaned close and whispered, "Don't worry. She's going to regret this." The thing is, Karen didn't know who she'd just crossed. Most people don't. I travel without any attention, plain clothes, simple carry-on, no hint of status. But in truth, I own 62 airports around the world. From major hubs to private terminals, my company oversees airport management, flight logistics, and even airline contracts. The airport we were currently in. It was one of mine. I quietly called the flight attendant over and asked to speak with the captain. She looked surprised but nodded, guiding me toward the cockpit. The captain, a seasoned man with years of service, looked up when I entered. He recognized me instantly. "Mr. Carson," he said with a quick nod. Didn't expect to see you flying commercial today. Trying to stay low-key, I said with a faint smile. But we've got a situation in row 12. A passenger assaulted my wife. His expression hardened immediately. Understood. I'll handle it personally. When I returned to my seat, Emily was still trying to dry her blouse with napkins. I squeezed her hand. It's taken care of, I whispered. A few minutes later, Karen came strutting back down the aisle like she owned the plane. I told them it was just an accident, she said loudly, looking around for approval. You can't take things so seriously. Passengers avoided her gaze. The flight attendant followed her, this time with the captain behind her. He stood tall and calm, but his tone was icy when he spoke. Ma'am, you'll need to gather your belongings and disembark the aircraft. Karen's head snapped toward him. What? Why? She should leave. Her husband's making a scene. The captain didn't flinch. Ma'am, he said, the gentleman you're referring to isn't just a passenger. He's the owner of this airport, and several others. The blood drained from Karen's face. You're joking. I'm afraid not, he replied firmly. Please exit the plane immediately. And that's when the whispers began again, this time, filled with awe. The cabin went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen froze, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to form words but couldn't find any. Her arrogance melted away, replaced by sheer disbelief. I didn't know, she stammered, looking from me to the captain and back again. This is just a misunderstanding. The captain's expression didn't soften. Ma'am, throwing coffee on another passenger is an act of assault. You will not be flying on this plane today. Karen started shaking her head frantically, her voice rising in panic. You can't do this. I paid for this flight. You can't just. But her argument ended when two airport security officers stepped into the cabin. They didn't say a word, just waited for the captain's nod. When he gave it, one of them calmly said, Ma'am, please come with us. Karen looked around desperately, as if expecting someone to defend her. Nobody moved. Every passenger was staring at her, some with pity, most with quiet satisfaction. The woman who had spent the past 15 minutes shouting about getting what she deserved, was now speechless. Slowly, she gathered her expensive handbag and phone, muttering to herself as the officers escorted her down the aisle. Her heels clicked against the floor, the same sharp rhythm that had announced her arrival, but this time, it sounded like defeat. As soon as she was gone, the tension in the cabin lifted like a fog clearing after a storm. The passengers began whispering, some shaking their heads, others quietly clapping. The flight attendant came over, offering Emily a new shirt from the first-class supply and apologizing again. Emily smiled weakly. It's all right, she said softly, I just want to forget it. I turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You shouldn't have to forget it. You did nothing wrong, I said. She looked at me, a mix of exhaustion and admiration in her eyes. You didn't have to do all that, she whispered. I smiled faintly. Maybe not. But she needed to understand that respect isn't optional. A few minutes later, the captain himself returned to our row. Mr. Carson, Mrs. Carson, he said politely, on behalf of the airline, we sincerely apologize. Your seats have been upgraded to first class. Drinks and meals are complimentary, of course. Emily laughed softly, finally starting to relax. We followed the attendant to our new seats, where she gazed out the window, the one she'd fought for, the one she rightfully deserved. The sun was rising, painting the clouds gold and pink. As the engines roared to life and the plane began to taxi, a few passengers gave us knowing smiles. One man whispered, "Good for you." I nodded back, smiling quietly. When we lifted off, Emily rested her head on my shoulder. Do you think she learned her lesson? She asked. Oh, I'm certain she did, I said, watching the sky open before us. Next time, she'll think twice before throwing coffee, especially at the wife of the man who owns 62 airports.